We have a $480,000 discrepancy, and all signs point to your workstation. My CEO didn't look angry. He looked disappointed, which is the most effective mask a corporate sociopath can wear. He sat across from me in the boardroom, a space of mahogany and cold glass that suddenly felt very small. To his left was Marcus, our VP of Operations, wearing a suit that cost more than my car and a look of practiced concern. To his right, an HR consultant was already opening a termination folder. They thought they had me. They had spent 3 months carefully moving numbers, deleting digital entries, and creating a paper trail that ended exactly at my door. They needed a fall guy for a massive inventory leak, and I was the perfect candidate, efficient, quiet, and someone who knew the system too well. I looked at the spreadsheet they pushed across the table. It was a masterpiece of creative accounting. Every missing unit, every lost shipment, every manual adjustment was time-stamped to my login. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I didn't even raise my voice. I just looked at Marcus and asked for one thing. Can we pull the raw server logs from the secondary cloud backup? Not the dashboard records we're looking at now, the admin-level activity logs that track hardware IDs. Marcus flinched. It was a micro-expression, a slight tightening of the jaw that lasted a millisecond. That was the moment I knew he hadn't just framed me. He had forgotten that I was the one who built the safety net he was currently falling through. To understand how we got to a $500,000 theft, you need to understand the world of medical logistics. We handled high-cost orthopedic implants, titanium plates, specialized screws, and joint replacements. These aren't just parts, they are high-ticket assets. A single surgical kit the size of a briefcase can be worth $30,000. In this industry, the margin for error is zero. If a hospital needs a hip replacement at 4 a.m. and the system says it's in the warehouse but the shelf is empty, lives are at stake. The company was a chaotic mess of rapid growth and zero oversight. I was the inventory controller. My job was to make sure the physical stock matched the digital record. Marcus, on the other hand, was a high flyer. He was the one who brought in the big contracts, drove the Italian sports car, and took clients to 5-course dinners. But Marcus had a problem. He was living a $300,000 lifestyle on a $150,000 salary. I started noticing the ghost shipments 6 months ago. These were kits marked as returned to vendor in our system, but they never appeared on the vendor's receiving dock. When I raised the issue, Marcus told me it was a system sync error caused by our outdated software. He told me to stay in my lane and focus on the daily cycle counts. That was my first red flag. In my experience, when an executive tells you to stop looking at a financial leak, it's usually because they're the ones holding the bucket. I knew a storm was coming. Marcus started becoming strangely helpful. He'd ask for my login credentials under the guise of helping with month-end reconciliation. He'd suggest I take long weekends while he personally handled the audits. I never gave him my password, but I knew that as a VP, he had access to the master administrative override. So I did the only thing a compliance-minded person does when they smell smoke. I stayed quiet, and I started a secondary off-site log of every administrative action taken on my workstation. I didn't just track what was changed, I tracked the metadata. The Tuesday morning of the execution meeting was a perfectly orchestrated event. Marcus had presented the CEO with a report showing that over $480,000 in implants had been manually adjusted out of the system from my terminal. The timestamps were surgical. They matched my lunch breaks. They matched the late hours I spent in the office alone. On paper, I was a thief who was slowly draining the company dry. "I think it's best if we involve the police now," Marcus said, leaning back and crossing his legs. "Unless, of course, you want to sign a confession and discuss a voluntary repayment plan to avoid a public trial. We want to be reasonable here." This was the choice they had built for me: sign and lose my career, or fight and risk a felony charge. I looked Marcus directly in the eye. "The dashboard logs you're showing only track the what. They show a change was made, but they don't track the who if an admin override is used from a remote device. However, our secondary cloud server, the one we use for disaster recovery, tracks the MAC address and the unique hardware ID of the device that initiates those overrides." I pulled a tablet out of my bag and laid it on the mahogany table. I had been waiting for this meeting for 90 days. I had spent every night for 3 months verifying these numbers while my family slept. 3 of these thefts happened while I was in the hospital for my daughter's surgery, I said, my voice steady. My workstation was locked and the office was empty, but the logs show that a mobile device, specifically a flagship tablet registered to the VP's office, accessed my terminal remotely using an administrative backdoor. The silence in that room became absolute. The HR consultant stopped writing. The CEO leaned forward, his eyes darting between me and Marcus. I swiped to the next page of my report. And here are the GPS coordinates of that mobile device during those specific sessions. It wasn't in the office. It wasn't at a client meeting. It was at a private residence in the hills. Your residence, Marcus. Your home Wi-Fi signatures embedded in the login packet. The CEO's face went from disappointed to terrified in 3 seconds. He wasn't scared for me anymore. He was scared of the massive legal liability Marcus had just invited into the building. Marcus tried to stand up. He tried to claim it was a technical misunderstanding, an error in how the remote access protocols were mapped. He tried to say he was checking the system to help me. But the logs don't have feelings. They don't have flexibility. They are a digital footprint of a man trying to steal $500,000 and bury his subordinate to cover his tracks. I didn't stop there. I also took the liberty of contacting the vendor who supposedly received those ghost shipments. They've provided a formal affidavit stating they never received the kits. However, they did mention that a private broker has been selling our specific serialized implants on the secondary market. I took a screenshot of the listings. The contact email for the seller? It's a burner account, but the recovery phone number ends in the same 4 digits as your personal cell, Marcus. The police weren't called for me. They were called for the VP of operations. The subsequent investigation revealed that Marcus hadn't just stolen the implants. He had been running a business within a business for nearly 2 years. He was using our logistics network, our shipping accounts, and our warehouse space to move gray market medical supplies. The total loss wasn't $480,000. Once the forensic auditors were done, it was closer to $2.2 million. Marcus was escorted out of the building in handcuffs 30 minutes later. He didn't look like a high flyer anymore. He looked like a man who had finally realized that being the loudest person in the room doesn't make you the smartest. The company offered me his job the following morning. They offered me a significant raise and a loyalty bonus. I declined. If an executive can frame an employee for a felony for 6 months without the CEO or HR noticing the glaring red flags, that's not a company I want to lead. I took a massive severance package in exchange for a non-disclosure agreement regarding the specifics of the theft to protect their stock price. And I walked out. I learned one thing in that boardroom. Loyalty in a corporation is a fairy tale. The only thing that protects you is the data you keep and the foresight to realize that your boss isn't your friend. He's just a line item in a log you need to be able to read. Marcus thought he was the architect of my downfall. He didn't realize he was just providing the evidence for his own. So, I'm asking you, if your boss asked for your cooperation on something that didn't feel right, would you trust the system to protect you? Or would you start building a server of your own? Tell me what you think in the comments. I read everyone.